I think this is very, very typical of the left now. They are not in any real sense Democrats. They don't believe in the popular vote unless by their power in the media they can manipulate it, and of course by massive voter fraud. Even that wasn't big enough to get it for them this time.
Yeah, they stole 5 states, Trump still won.
I hope they clean up. So Trump still won, and of course they're furious. And what should we do about this? What we've got to do is to make it clear to them that they either shape up and sharpen up and get back with democracy and start understanding that the will of the people in a republic that is democratic is sovereign, or they can get out of politics altogether and go and grow vegetable marrows. They can't pretend that they like democracy when they don't. And one of the reasons why they lost is that people are beginning to realize that the left hate democracy because every so often, as it has this time, it allows somebody else a turn at the levers of government, and they are increasingly intolerant of that. It's partly propaganda.
It's a cult of power.
At universities. And this is where I want to talk about the Freedom Force International Congress.
That's right, you've got to...
That's right. Now, this is taking place at the Marriott Tempe at the Buttes Hotel. It's just a few miles away from Sky Harbor Airport in Phoenix, Arizona, from the 2nd to the 4th of December. And I will be there. And I want to meet as many Alex Jones fans as can get there. So I want you to get hold of the organizers now. You can see the details there on screen, and make sure that you make a booking and come and meet me in Phoenix. There will be some of the most interesting climate professors and scientists there. There'll be lay researchers like me. I will be making a major announcement about this big error that my team have discovered in the climate models, and you take the error away and the climate scare disappears overnight. I'll be explaining all that. This will be a major blowback against this so-called Democrat, but in fact anti-democratic left-wing movement that you see throwing things in the street, setting fire to things.
And by the way,
yeah, this one could blow the whole thing out of the water. There's going to be enormous resistance, I think, to getting it published in any peer-reviewed journal, but we're working on that.
Sure.
And if we succeed, then effectively that's the end of the climate scare. They're all going to have to run away and humiliate her. Let us be even blunter. The truth is that the left today, what they stand for is in every respect evil. It is, to quote the former Chancellor of the Exchequer under Margaret Thatcher, Nigel Lawson, it is wicked. It is evil. It is of the devil, as we say in the Catholic Church.
It is, though.
It is literally, if you look at all the things they stand for, this climate thing is based on a lie, and a lie is a pretty serious sin against the way the universe is supposed to operate. They favor homosexuality, they favor divorce, they favor abortion. All of these things lead to disruption of lives.
They favor non-commitment.
All of the things they favor. They favor running up massive debts and destroying the economy. They favor fighting a war against coal to destroy, because that is the devil. You see, if you go right back to Catholic theology, the ancient Christian theology, there is a clear understanding that there is, just as there is such a thing as absolute good, so as its opposite, there is such a thing as absolute evil. And you can either take the side of the good and try to do the right thing, or you can take the side of evil and try to do the wrong thing. Now, in the past, there were some good points in the left and some good points in the right, and you kind of, the religion didn't really come into it.
That's where I was.
Now what you have is a very clear divide between good on the right and wickedness and straightforward naked evil on the left. And I was talking the other day to Sir Robert Armstrong, who had been the head of the Home Civil Service, Secretary to the Cabinet during most of the Thatcher years. And he used a very interesting word about the Thatcher government. He said it was a good government. I said, what do you mean by good? He said, I mean good in every sense. He said it was morally good. He said, none of you meant anyone any harm. He said, in my experience in working with governments of all stamps, that's unique. He said normally people get into government and they want to do down some category of their opponents or another. He said there was nothing of that in any of you. He said it was quite remarkable. And this really is the difference between us on the centre-right and them on the left, that we mean nobody any harm and they wish harm to many, many, many
Sure.
of their fellow human beings. They wish harm and they plot to achieve harm. They plot to do things that are, objectively speaking, evil. They are wicked.
Let me bring this.
All of this, if one reads, say, there's an enormous theology of how demons behave. You could read, for instance, the Malleus Maleficarum, the Hammer of the Witches, the various books like this, which go into how Satan behaves. You can read the Bible, large chunks in both testaments on this, and you see these satanic, these downright wicked characteristics coming through in the extreme left.
Astounding. Let me add this point then.
Everybody who voted Democrat is going to go to hell, or everybody is a Satanist, or everybody is a devil. No, of course not. Let's be sensible here. What I am saying is that a lot of the policies they advocate are, objectively speaking, downright...
The theology is satanic. Let me... Weird, is this genetic or is it really spiritual?
This glorification of wickedness on the left. And I think we've been a little bit too soft. We haven't said what I'm saying now as bluntly and plainly as I am saying it now. And I'm saying this not because I hate them or I wish them harm. I'm saying it because they wish us harm. They wish the world harm. And it is time...
Yeah, they want to cut off the carbon and kill 1 billion people.
All of that. And they're killing probably a Holocaust at the absolute minimum, possibly 2, every year, because they're denying them electricity. If you'd had the international community now meeting in Marrakesh, last year it was Paris, if you had them meeting instead to make sure that everyone on the planet had an electricity supply and therefore could have a clean water supply, decent sewerage, decent basic healthcare, decent basic education. They could have some light to read by at night for their studies. This could transform the third world countries, lift them out of the kind of perma-poverty that the left has flung them into, and make them as prosperous as we.
Let me stop you again.
And if that happens, the population of the world will stabilize. The net environmental benefit of doing the kindness to these poor people, of lifting them out of their poverty. This is unqualified a good thing, and yet the implacable opponents of it are the left over and over and over again. And they have diverted the attention of the international community away from sorting out poverty.
And by the way, Lord Monckton,
and instead they're miring into this climate change nonsense, which is simply a way of, again, trying to destroy the prosperous Western economies to the advantage of nobody.
That's right.
The next big fight is going to be an internal one in the Western democracies because of the staggering indebtedness that has been caused largely by left-wing policies. And this indebtedness is becoming impossible to sustain. We talked of this earlier. That's going to be the next battleground. And the faction that is going to dominate politics in the next 50 years will be the faction that is able to produce, as we did under Margaret Thatcher, a credible, workmanlike answer to that. I mean, I was approached the other day and somebody said, would you like to be, have a job in the Trump administration? And of course, the one thing that I would like to do in the Trump administration is do what I quietly did for Margaret Thatcher, which is to exercise a steady, quiet, invisible, gentle downward pressure on the spending of the federal government. I know how to do that. I did it for Margaret Thatcher. And that's what I would really like to do for Donald Trump, because otherwise he won't be able to afford his tax-cutting splurge. And he will simply find that, as Ron Reagan found, the indebtedness rises rapidly and you don't end up doing as much good as you wanted. So that's what I would like to do. And that's where the next battleground is going to be. It's on whether or not we can break the grip of the left on the federal finances and get rid of these 93% in the District of Columbia who voted for Clinton, pull in some people from outside who are not committed to communism and try to reform the federal finances, because otherwise the money is going to run out.
Sure, and if you read
all that far from now. I mean, it's very difficult. You asked me earlier how long will it be, but it won't be long from now. And the danger, if America continues down her present route of massive overspending and therefore continually having to cut things she once spent money on, like defense, is that America is gradually becoming weaker and weaker around the world.
Sure, let me add this. I'm going to skip this final break.
Siberian gas becoming very prosperous. You have paying anti-fracking groups in Europe to make sure they can go on overcharging the Europeans for their gas to keep the Russian military going. You have China, massive military expansion. We have to match that so that they realize they cannot simply trump
Sure,
us.
Lord Monckton, we're almost out of...
One thing from which you should take both comfort and pride, Alex, and that is that you did make a material difference to the vote. You're speaking out in favor of freedom. Okay, as you know, I tease you from time to time because you go over the top. But given the pressure under which we on the centre-right are being put, one forgives you that. But you and those like you, like Matt Drudge and so forth, like Steve Bannon, of course, and Breitbart, who had the courage to buck the trend of universal Marxism in the media, the Marx stream media, and instead to give an alternative view, which won't necessarily always be congenial to China. Well, that's what freedom is all about. And because of you, Alex Jones, and because of InfoWars and Prison Planet, because of these enterprises of freedom that you have set up as a voice of freedom, it is because of this voice of freedom that freedom has found itself again, and that's why Trump got elected. So don't feel upset that they attack you. That when they attack you, then they're paying you the compliment of saying it was you that helped to put Trump where he is. And you can bet that Steve Bannon knows this, that Trump knows this, that people like Myron Ebell, you know, the team he's gathering around him, they know this. They know that you have been standing up for freedom. In picking Steve Bannon as his chief strategist, that was a brilliant appointment. Steve has been working privately with them for really quite some time, but I was delighted when he moved in to kind of take over the campaign, still more delighted when he was appointed as Trump's advisor-in-chief, effectively. And he will make sure that if anything needs to be known about how politics works and how to play that, there's nobody cleverer than Steve Bannon at that. So what Trump has always been good at, as every successful businessman has to be good at, is bringing good people in to work.
Delegating.
This is exactly that, and finding the good people, and he's doing that, and he's doing it, to my mind, very successfully, very quickly. And so I'm not at all worried about whether the Trump presidency will be a competent presidency. I'm quite sure it will. I have one or two worries, as you know, about the financial side, fiscal side, all of that. But I think that's where I could help them. I could show them how.
Absolutely. Well, I'm sure he wants to talk to you. Let me ask you this in closing then.
Yeah.
What happens if they kill Trump? Because they've got Time Magazine, the New York Times, LA Times, every paper basically calling for his death. No one goes to jail. I mean, that's not free speech. If I call for someone's death with 30 million listeners, I should go to jail. That's not free speech. So they're calling for his death. What if they get it?
In Britain, you would go to jail for that. That is still an offence here. Incitement to murder, it's called. It is also an offence under your code. And what I would recommend, and this is something which I think on the whole the centre-right have been too relaxed about, is that what you have to do is to get clear evidence where they do say these things and call for these remedies, and go to the police and demand a prosecution.
I agree. So we have to demand prosecutions. We can't just let them make the threats at the LA Times or the New York Times. We've got to go, hey, grand jury, indict this son of a bitch.
Now, here's a question you might be able to answer. Is it possible for private citizens to call together a grand jury, or is it only in the power of the prosecutors to do that?
It varies state to state, whether it's federal or local, and I'm just going from a gestalt memory. But when the president's involved, it affects every citizen that's a registered voter. I mean, I think citizens can demand it.
Well, if we can demand and impanel a grand jury, I have a long list of crimes they need to look at, including all these death threats to Trump, which are being made in papers like the Los Angeles
Hell, they're
Times.
death threatening me every 10 seconds.
Well, that too, every time that happens, nobody does it to me because they know I go straight to the police. And they know that if anyone tries to make a death threat against me, they'll find themselves in jail in 2 shakes of a duck's tail. They don't dare. And the problem is that you have...
So you're right. We can't roll over to it. We've got to press charges.
You have to press charges, and you have to start working this jury system. You see, in Britain, we have the right of private prosecution. If I want to prosecute the state, I can. I've done it on a couple of occasions, and I won on both.
You got Al Gore's film thrown out.
That was a civil matter, but we can go and initiate a criminal prosecution. Now, the Supreme Court took away that right. It's a very essential right to freedom from American citizens about 100 years ago, I think. And you need to get that right back. But I am told, and this is why I wanted to know a bit more about the impaneling of grand juries, if that is something that can be done at the initiative of private citizens, that is another way of achieving...
Sure, private citizens can make a filing, and then grand juries are supposed to look at it. More and more county prosecutors try to hide that, but that is a common law remedy.
Well, if that is your right, then I think there's a number of things. I don't know whether you've come across the case of Mr. Finicum, who was, I think, murdered by the FBI.
Oh, yeah, and the jury found the folks not guilty. Yeah, it was horrible murder.
I didn't like the look of that, I must say. I was asked to look into it, and I have looked into it, and so far I am minded to set up an international commission to examine what happened on that day, because there are some very clear gaps in the official...
Oh, there's video. They shot the car up for no reason. And we're not trying to have war with the feds, but...
So there's a lot of this going on. Of course, there's still the matter of Mr. Obama's birth certificate, where Mr. Trump, for various reasons of expediency, decided that he would no longer bang on about that one. But it is bogus. That one needs to be dealt with. The grand jury, on being confronted with the evidence that the sheriff's office has now amassed, would, I think, be virtually certain to indict. And so I think that these are some of the things that if we want to fight evil, we must fight them with the weapons of good. And one of the weapons of good is the law courts.
That's right. Lord Monckton, thank you so much. Scienceandpublicpolicy.org. Great interview. Amazing. We'll be back in the 4th hour. Stay with me. Infowars.com/show. Spread that link. They hate this broadcast.